Welcome to Magic Club. I'm Andrew Main, joined by Mr. Jordan Gold.
Hello, hello.
And joining us back in the land of the free-ish, Mr. Simon Coronel. We are in California, so,
Yeah, it's pretty
Anything
free.
goes.
Some plastic bags or something. Sorry, you can't have that.
The only slavery is economic.
Simon, you're back. You were in Macau.
I'm back. It's so good to be back.
For 3 years, right?
So,
like
those of you who know, Simon was performing at the House of Magic in Macau, which is this great, big, huge, magical entertainment extravaganza designed by Franz Harari. We did another episode talking about that, which is amazing. And now Simon has returned. He escaped from the House of Magic, and he's here. What was the first thing you did when you got back? And you're from Australia originally, but is America home for you now?
It is now, yeah. It's my new home. I'm a legit permanent resident green card holder. That's home. It's where I pay rent.
Right.
Even when I'm traveling. First thing I did was, number one, I ate a kale and quinoa salad.
So when I got back with Japan, first thing I did was Taco Bell, okay? I'm like, Taco Bell.
California, man. California. And relished with visceral joy the fact that I could have an intelligent, bantery conversation with my server while ordering it.
Nice.
This was something Nick Paul, my friend, we were doing podcasts while we were there called the Macau Sessions. He said, this was his line, and I immediately related to it. What do you miss the most about America? He just said critical thinking instantly.
So
and I
relished on that.
So, little history lesson. China's the worst. Let's start with that. Let's just tell you what I really think.
China's the worst. This is a great podcast.
Afghanistan's probably worse. I'm not going to lie. China. Go back to the Cultural Revolution in I think the 70s. My exact details are hazy. Essentially, it was a triumph of Marxism. The people took over, decided, you know what, the intellectuals are screwing up the country. The working people, we're going to take over. Mao Zedong ran the party. And basically, they either imprisoned, exiled, or murdered all the intellectuals, all the thinkers, all the analytical people. Mm-hmm. And the country turned to absolute shit. Millions died from starvation because they mismanaged the farming and supply chain. The whole thing was horrifying. It was just an absolute shit show. And fast forward a few decades and a couple of generations later, people who went through that period are now the parents and grandparents of the last two generations. There's this ingrained sense in China that don't think, don't question, don't display critical thinking skills, because then you will be exiled, imprisoned, or murdered, or just disappear. And you really see it. You see that there's been a couple of generations of this anti-intellectualism, because most people, the bell curve in China is heavily skewed towards not thinking, not questioning things, not thinking why and how can we make this better. Just don't think. Follow instructions. Do what you're told. Do your job. Nothing more. And it's horrifying. It's just, and that manifests itself in so many things about the way the country and the culture work that just don't make sense because people aren't really thinking about it. They're just, this is what we do. We're not taught to think.
The way I sort of, when I was in Shanghai, I had a wonderful time. I loved everybody, but it was very clearly this is what happens when a small, tiny party controls everything, and the purpose of control is not harmony, but the purpose of the control is to keep them in power. And we talk here in our country like, oh, the elite control it. Like, no. Anybody could be president. We found that out, okay? And in China, it's that these things, it would be, everything's the speech, everything's controlled. I had a friend there who was the most apolitical person you could imagine, and they were upset one day. I said, what's the matter? Says, they deleted my version of Twitter, my tweet. Like, what did you say? Oh, I said I was upset because the subway was late again. And the reason they deleted that was because that was a reflection on the party, which was saying that things weren't running on time, and so they deleted that. You could not criticize. You could not criticize, even say this basic service didn't work. There is armies of people there whose whole job is to filter that. And there's been an amazing success story in China. There's a lot of amazing things going on there, and there's a lot of things that we so take for granted. We so take for granted the kind of freedoms we have here that it frustrates me when people go, well, they play up some, China's had a wonderful, when you go from a agrarian economy to a merchant level, to an industrial economy, yes, your economy booms considerably. The rest of the growth is where it gets a little more challenging, and it's going to be an interesting story. We wish we want a China that succeeds. We want a China with a vibrant middle class to continue to grow because it's good for them. It's good for the whole world. But that's what happens when one small party controls things. And despite how frustrating it may be in American politics to see, different parties and the sort of the lack of control or whatever, I'd rather have this.
Yeah, and what the most heartbreaking thing about it is the people in China who are displaying critical thinking abilities, but don't quite have that encouraged or rewarded, and almost feel like there's something wrong with them, that they're in this environment that doesn't support what they do. And it's heartbreaking to see the people, because plenty of the people there are wonderful and great, but they're just living in this incredibly crushing, crippling environment.
So how does that reflect for your audiences, Simon? Like, how does that come across when you're performing for those people 6 times a day?
It is rough. I mean, it's well documented, and this is in no way an aspersion on the House of Magic. Great venue, really cool place to work, but the Chinese audiences, and again, we're talking about mainland China, not Hong Kong, Taiwan. We had a group of Taiwanese come through who were amazing, and it was like a breath of fresh air. But the mainlanders, and it's funny, you go to Hong Kong and Taiwan, and they can't stand the mainlanders. They feel the same way. They're going, effing mainlanders, they're just the worst. Because they tend to be ruder, less sophisticated, more selfish, just, again, less thoughtful in every way, literally and figuratively. And so they tend to be, it's a bit like a Castle Friday lunch audience for every show. It's just, they sort of sit there just kind of watching, going,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Talking to their friends freely about the show in the crowd, just this guy, just texting openly on their phones. Sometimes just walking into the middle of the stage to take a photo of you, just ignoring the fact that there's a show going on, just oblivious and self-centered and just unsophisticated. And that's not as a value judgment. I mean, it is a value judgment, but just as a statement of fact, it's not really thinking about or is aware of these cultural forms.
There's a mentality, and it's pervasive in every culture and by some people. And it's not to say China has, I see this here, where you treat anybody who's in any sort of service capacity as if they're beneath you. And you see that you go to a restaurant, you watch somebody talk to the server as if they're their private slave or whatever. And it's like, no, that person has a job. Their job is you tell them what you want, they go to the kitchen, they bring it back. We go to your job, you do the same thing. They're not your servant. You're not some ducal lord going in there. And you see that here, but I've seen that in other countries, especially so, where that is the norm. Where, well, if I'm here, they're here, and I'm because they're used to people above them stomping on them, and that's frustrating because I've seen that. Drives me crazy here. I go to other countries and I see it even larger, and it's amazing. You just but again, we probably have that attitude, as Americans often too, because we'll consider oh, you're from this country, well, you're here, and we're here kind of thing. And that's the thing I try to watch out for myself is I hate it when I see it, but when am I doing that?
Yeah. It's always that healthy questioning your own instincts and your own assumptions about those things. Checking your privilege.
Yeah. So man. Simon, you see a lot of performers who sort of their energy builds off of their audience, and obviously if you have an audience that is just checked out and ignoring you, it's got to be tough to try and match that. So how did that sort of play out for you? I mean, obviously you had to power through that.
Yeah, it was funny. Every single performer who arrived at the House of Magic, everybody who I saw and everyone I heard of went through this rough first few weeks of just not knowing how to react to the crowds and just feeling like they were dying in every show, and just it's horrible. It's such a tough feeling when you put your heart and soul and business plan into this act and this material, and everyone got through it. Everyone eventually figured it out, and we were all helping each other and looking out for each other, and everyone was really great in how to do it. And for me, one of the ways it manifested was in working out how to reach the crowds. By the end of it, I was opening the show by I'd start with a silent routine just to get attention and build people, because I was essentially doing indoor street shows. I would gather the crowd in the lobby and then do a 15-minute parlor set, is how I was treating it, because I just think roving sucks. I'm just not a fan. And I wanted to work on that kind of material. So I'd gather the crowd and then going in Mandarin, because I was speaking that by that point.
Of course.
Hey, how are you all? with this gesture, and I would usually get a fairly lackluster, okay, a few people would answer, most people would be silent, and then repeat louder, how is everybody? Okay, better response. And then if you want to see, and again in Mandarin it's slight translation difference, but if you want to see something, if you want to see magic, say yeah. And again, you would get yeah, a few people. If you want to see magic, say yeah. Yeah. Now, if I did that in America, that's quite cheesy and overblown, and that's not the way I would start a show at all. That's sort of a hacky performer. Okay. Yeah, everyone's going, please. Whereas in China, it was necessary. That was a way to let them know, hey, this is going to be interactive. We want to respond to each other. Because in China, most of the performance arts are very much you watch passively and don't interact or respond. And whether that's a good or bad thing, that's just the way it is there. They're not used to this applauding, gasping, saying things, engaging. So that was after trying many things, that was the routine I settled on, to just train, condition them to respond.
What's it like working with kid audiences? Sometimes if you do shows, one of the things I didn't understand at the time, to show you how unself-aware I am, if I did shows when I was a kid magician, performer, teenager, performing for kids who were from affluent neighborhoods where they always had their birthday parties and stuff, they knew the routine. We sit down there, we watch the show, we watch this, whatever, and their behavior could be across the board. If I was performing for kids who were from, lower income areas, they weren't as familiar with shows, and they were the best audiences once I taught them how to interact and how to have fun. Because then became, once they knew, they're like, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, so they're scared.
What's the contract? What's the dynamic?
And then you're like, this is the interaction. I'd say this, you get a cheer, you're just going to handle it there. And once they do that, great. You think it was the best show ever. But it was, you had to teach, you had to condition them to say, this is how we interact.
Well, it's funny you say that. Oh, sorry, you go.
That exists, I think, for every show and every audience. It's just that for kids and Chinese mainlanders, you have to be a little more blunt about what it is. Whereas for a more sophisticated crowd, it's a much subtler.
Subtle.
Sometimes it's a nonverbal, just body language, structurally into the routine to get people to react.
Sure, I would just say that a lot of times as they get older, your audience is to be much more mixed. You walk into the room of the Magic Castle, you don't know, you don't, half that audience might be very, very sophisticated, go sees lots of shows. Half the audience could never seen a show before, and it's more mixed, who you are, so you can't make as many assumptions. When you're performing for young people or you're in other countries, there are certain assumptions you can make. It's like, okay, these all kids are from the same neighborhood or the same this, so I know I'll do this, but if I've got a bunch of kids who are like, their parents send them all to honors class or, to private schools and stuff, I'm like, okay, I know I have a certain set of assumptions here I can make about how cheesy do I need to be or not. And that was sort of the degree of like how over, some class, like, no, I wouldn't be, hey, everybody do this, because they'd be like, man, who's this clown? But the kids from who never see a lot of shows, it's like, yeah, this guy's great, not at all a hack.
It's funny you mention the kids shows, because that was the life-saving, most valuable note someone gave me, Arcadio, Spanish performer, who was working at the same time I was. And, everyone could see I was the new guy, I was struggling, and everyone could relate to it because everyone had gone through the same thing. It's, how do we help the new guy? And Arcadio had the best note. He said, think of it like a kids show, which is not something I do, but I know enough about the theory of that was the one phrase of advice that unlocked me being able to eventually figure it out. And doing that action response, and having read things like David Kay's book and those things about kids show performance theory, that was when the turning point for me, where I started to play in that space and get that interaction and that responsiveness.
So speaking of playing and stuff, let's talk a little bit what you're going to show us later on. For those of you who don't know, Magic Club is two parts. This is Magic Club, where we talk about magic news, what's going on, get a little insight into performer mindsets. And then we do a separate section called The Secret Session, which is available if you go to patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Magic Club. And there, if you sign up, it's only $2 per episode. You get access to all of our archives of secret sessions, which after this show, we take our performers, we squeeze them dry of all of the magic insight and knowledge they have. Simon showed us some wonderful changes and stuff. Last time it was really, really powerful stuff. And people who were like, oh, I know this stuff, watch, oh my God, that's amazing. You've got something really special you're going to show us this one.
It's pretty special. It's a build change. I changed stuff. changing cards, changing bills. It's not the bill change for for some of the people who know about the thing I do, but it's a bill change. I use many different bill changes in many different situations, and this is one of them. It's not the crazy visual one that I do because that's something I'm keeping private for a while. But this is something else that it originally began as a joke that I was just going to perform to reveal as a crappy version of the trick. And then in doing it, started to realize it was actually really strong, so much more than I expected. And that was actually, sorry, you go.
I was there for you for some of those performances where you're trying to demonstrate how amazing your sleight of hand version is by showing off this other version. And the people were like, "That's amazing!" And you're like, "But no, there's a better. I need to show you the better version of it."
Yeah, and you undersold it because what you have is you have there. Simon's known for an amazing bill switch, but it's like pure sleight, and it is really challenging kind of thing to do. And I don't know all the moves to it. I've seen him do it a billion times. I don't know what's going on. This thing is an extremely practical, very, very useful kind of thing that you can do. You can keep in your wallet. You don't need a anything, right?
Well, and the big thing, you don't need no gaffs other than the inbuilt thing. The interesting thing about it's an old trick. It's a very old principle, but what I realized when I was doing it, the reason why it was getting good reactions, and I was thinking it wouldn't, is I'd seen people do it, but no one normally did it very well. Because it was easy, they didn't take the time and effort to really work on it the way you have to with a more difficult one. So they'd stopped, as a la Werner, they'd stopped way too soon. Whereas because I was so used to the way more advanced, involved one, even doing the simple, easy, relatively self-working one, I put as much effort into the specifics and the handling of it, and it ended up looking way better.
Yeah, the handling is great. I love this because I like build changes, but the contemporary version a lot of people do, you've got to have the, and it's just for many performers not a problem if you're doing walk around or whatever you plan on doing that, but having something that's just always with you, and I'm a big fan of that. A lot of the stuff I put out, flat pack, other stuff is just like being able to do amazing stuff, and I've seen this and it looks great. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes I don't know which one I'm watching because I think it looks great.
And a lot of the changes out there, you have to invest $50 to $500 just into the part you have to carry with you, which you don't. It's not money that's gone, but it's also not money that you have anymore. Yeah. And this is a version that you've invested very little, and you can spend it and make it at a moment's notice kind of thing.
So essentially what it is, it's a routine, it's a method that will probably be familiar to most viewers, but it's a lot of extra subtleties and handlings on how to take a trick we know but make it way stronger, way better, which is most of my material. Very little of my material is completely groundbreakingly original. Most of my good stuff is stuff that bill changes and three flies and book tests and stuff where I've kind of gone, okay, let's refine many, many, many little things about it to elevate it into something way better than what it normally is.
One of my favorite things that I saw Simon do is you were working on the Invisible deck a couple months ago, and your reasoning was like, why should only bad magicians get to do Invisible deck? Like there's a level where you sort of move beyond it, and then it's left for kind of beginners who buy it at the magic shop and are doing it. But it is a miracle in the right hands. So Simon's working on this routine, and we're down in the Hat and Hair area, the basement of the Magic Castle, workshopping tricks back and forth. And after the show, and you and I did like a 40-minute show back and forth between just all this new stuff we're working on.
Tag team Magic TM.
For any Magic Castle members, it's 20 minutes each, so we were within the bounds.
We fused
it's writing to the gentleman.
To the Ethics and Grievance Committee. So a new member with a gold pin, a magician member who auditioned to become a member, comes up to Simon and goes, "Hey, that was great. Your show was." What was that last trick? Was that your trick? He didn't realize that it was the Invisible deck, and this is a guy that's a magician member of the Magic Castle, because the way that you handled it was not the way that people are used to.
A standard template, paint by numbers, Invisible deck.
Right.
I have an invisible deck of cards. Shuffle them. Oh, take it out of the box first. Blah blah blah.
Which to be fair, like that, even that routine can be done really well. But a lot of people just take it out, read it, learn the method, and then just kind of like walk through it without thinking about what it anything can be done well, but you have to put the time and the energy in. So.
Yeah, one of the most damaging phrases in magic is that phrase self-working, because it's completely a lie. It's not just a lie, it's a damaging lie, because it makes you think you don't need work. Even if it's if it's literally push a button and it works, you still need to work on your delivery and your handling and the way you push that button. And, are you pushing it like that or like that? Or every detail matters to all of it.
I'm going to take a contrarian point of view here.
All right, bring it.
I hear your point, what you say.
Yeah.
I like self-working. I'll say that, and I'll say basically whatever, because as a performer, I love self-working because that means then I get to focus on the performance and stuff. And a lot of times what happens is magicians will learn a trick, they'll learn the technique of it, they'll learn that, and then once they learn the technique, they think they have the trick. And then they forget it's a why is Invisible Deck great? Because Invisible Deck, if you're a great performer, it comes across as a miracle because the trick is so easy to do. Not quite self-working, but it's so easy to do. You can spin it out into a miracle. But the reason a lot of magicians don't do it is because they don't do anything. They're like, well, how is this a trick? Because it does itself. It's like, well, it's like, how is this a play? I just said the words. It's like, yeah, exactly it.
I'd sort of prefer. I completely agree. You're right. I think maybe it's just a vernacular thing. Maybe calling them low difficulty or slightless or minimal. You know what I mean? Putting on the focus that they're not sleight of hand intensive, but the idea that it's self-working, that you need no work is.
All right.
Well, I on that thread, the self-working is. You can argue that, but what irks me even more is the magic copy when people just go, I bought this and 5 minutes later it was in my show, or tonight. It's like, I understand that maybe the trick is that easy that you could, in theory, open it up and start performing it immediately. But the idea that you're not sitting with it or thinking about it before just putting it into a context where you're actually performing it.
And that can work.
I would take the contrary on that, because I look, as a person who writes a lot of magic copy, is that a lot of times as consumers of magic, I get stuff and I'm like, you got to do this, then I got to do this, and then I got to do that. I got to assemble it. Then I got to do this. I got to learn these 14 different moves to do it. And I thought I was buying a simple method. That's part of what I think I'm buying is simple. When I hear that you can do it in 5 minutes, I don't think that's a good idea. Like when my illusion stuff, I'll get this periodic, like, hey, I've got a show next week. What's an easy one to build? I'm like, my stuff is easy to build, but that doesn't mean you're going to make it look good. And it drives me nuts when, people are like, I just did this trick on TV or whatever. What do you think? And I'm like, I think you never did it before. And that drives me crazy. But I know that when I can tell people like, hey, this thing's ready to be done in a couple minutes, it's true, you're not going to be a skilled performer at it, you do it. So I see it from the other side too, is a lot of times you get magic and you're like, I've got 5 pieces of thread, I've got all this, I got to do that. I'm like, I thought I was buying a clever method,
I think it's cool if you can open it up and in theory, buy it, open it, and perform it. But I don't think anyone should be doing that ever, unless it's something that and like you're buying it.
Sure.
Like Simon went on an Invisible Deck. He doesn't need to set it up. He knows how to use it already.
There's this threshold of. I think a lot about the different thresholds of quality, and it's a continuum. It's an endless gradient, and thinking about where do you draw the line of when is something good enough to share with an audience. And there's no definitive answer, but the biggest answer I think about is in terms of doing something before it's fully polished or before it's ready. When is it ready to actually unleash? And for me, I'm willing to do it for an audience in a show as long as no one in the audience feels like they wasted their time or money watching you. That's a very low threshold. That's very low, but it's amazing how many shows don't get above that threshold. I'm aiming way up here, zoom out to get how high at one of the best things the audience has ever seen in their lives. That's where I'm aiming at and I'm trying to get things to, but I'm willing to put them in the show right down here because climbing from here to here, for me, can only happen in front of a live audience. And so in practicing and rehearsing, I get it to here. And that can occasionally be the day I purchase a trick, rarely. But some tricks are, this is good enough to show people and they will go, that was worth my time to watch. Maybe only just, but still. And then the refinement happens, and then the details and the improvement, and you build it and grow from there. And that's sort of where my personal philosophy is right now. That may change over time and already has changed over time. But I always think about those two thresholds.
Speaking of change, what changed when you went to Macau as a performer, what changed after? What's changed your approach as a performer?
The biggest thing was, and this was a journey I was already on before Macau, but Macau really accelerated, I think we talked last time about clowning theory and all these other, and mime theory and improv theory and all these different approaches to performing. And the biggest thing that I've been on the journey of is really being present with the audience, really having your focus on what is their experience of the show, what's happening in their heads, as opposed to most of the time you look at most performers, comedians, magicians, and everything, and their focus is here. And you can see they're thinking about themselves and what they're doing, and I'm funny, and really being there with the audience in their minds, because that makes you more connected, more present, more adaptable to the energy in the room and so on. But also, it stops you going insane from boredom, from the repetition.
How many shows did you do?
Same. I'm not even sure. About 370, I think, roughly.
In 3 months.
I think, in 3 months.
Wow.
It was 6 a night and 8 on weekends, 5 or 6 days a week alternating. 5-day week, 6-day week, 5-day week. It's a lot of shows. And it wasn't 6 and 8 in the first month, but then it switched to 6 or 8 every single time. Each show was 15 to 25 minutes, depending. It would go 15-minute short set, 25-minute long set, 15-minute short set. A lot of shows. But one of the positive side effects of that was because that level of repetition, I deal badly with doing the same thing again and again. And apart from the fact that I was using it to work on material and try different things out, and it was a godsend in that regard. I workshopped so much new stuff. Was out of sheer emotional survival necessity, I was already trying to work on really being more, putting your focus on the audience. And this was a lot of this stuff with studying clowning and with Dr. Brown and these other performers. And it forced me to do it because the audience's experience of the show is unique and different every time. Every audience has a different experience of it, particularly doing more interactive material, bringing people up, interacting with them either on stage with you or into the crowd. And that was what kept it fresh for me each show, as I started to focus more and more on what's happening in their heads. Even though I'm going to say the same joke or do the same move each time, this audience's experience of that is unique and one of a kind and has never happened before and will never happen again. And that was one of the best things that came out of it, is I found by the end of it, I was surprisingly engaged. Every performance still felt much fresher than I would have thought it would, because it had forced me to either go insane from boredom or really invest in the audience rather than my own experience of the show. You get your head out of, it's literally very zen, getting your head away from yourself and into the world around you, which is always something I struggled with and still do as a performer, but it was really good. That was the biggest thing that I found developed for me. And the other thing that made a difference was just from, again, without that repetition, it wouldn't have happened. Obviously it was hard, but it was a really good thing in a way. By maybe halfway through, I remember turning up, and I'd either be tired or exhausted, or I was ill a couple of times. I had food poisoning once, and I got a flu once. So it was so far from 100%. And there's a crowd of people, and they're Chinese, so they're tricky to work with. But just being, I got this. My job is to rock these people's worlds and give them a great time and have them laughing and amazed. I'm going, oh yeah, no problem. And that level of confidence is something I'd never quite experienced to that degree before, of just made me think about, we tend to idealize the military type, the special forces guy. It really felt like that of performing, that sort of comfortable, not arrogance, but just the confidence that you can do this because you have done this so many times, it so deeply.
And that's what the military, you think about what does something look like on the outside, then you realize what it is on the inside. Acting's a great example of that. On the outside, people think, oh, you're going to red carpet premieres, the camera's rolling, you're doing these great things. Acting is waiting. Acting is just waiting. It's sitting in a chair, it's sitting aside, waiting to do your thing that you're going to do maybe for 15 or 20 minutes, and then you're going to stand there forever while they get their thing. I mean, that's what the reality of acting is, what you do most of your time. You look at I'm always fascinated by what's the reality of military. It's training. It's training. It's just training. So by the time you do it, it's automatic. You don't have to think.
Yeah,
and magic, and magic.
It's magic. It's waiting and training.
Yeah, in theory it should be training. But it's
magic is often jerking off, not literally, but figuratively. A lot of magicians just waiting and not really training that much because they really think they're great.
I know.
But they have an invisible deck. They don't need to work. It's self-working.
Just waiting for it to invisible deck to arrive in the mail.
There's a lot of talk about the 10,000 hours and all that, which is it's a nice phrase to use, but it's some things, and it just you try to apply it to different things. Like, well, this is different. This is different. The biggest thing that I think about is things you do where you get feedback loops. Your ability to take data to say, okay, how do I improve? Many people, I'd say most people they don't have a process to take external data and to improve. It's why they never get better at something. In Magic, you see that the magician who's 5 years never gets better because, one, they're not opening up that port to get in that data, and two, they don't know how to process it because they don't really care about that. But that's true in acting and writing and a lot of other things. People spend 5, 6, 10 years doing it, and they never get better because they don't have a process to get better. But if you have a high-intensity feedback process, you can learn things very, very, very quickly. Simon and I were at a party on Saturday night, and there was a neuroscientist there that talked about a very interesting study they do where they would give people, you'd go into a room, and you would have maybe like a suit that would give you like pressure parts of your body, or you'd hear sounds. You could program somebody to do a specific task, and they'd not be even conscious of the fact that you programmed them to do the task. They could do some complex sort of behaviors and stuff because the body learned on sort of a lower level. The little neural network assembled that information together. And the more feedback you get, the easier it is. That's how Siri and Alexa work. It's how they understand voices. They're trained over time to get better and better to adapt to very, very simple feedback. So when you want to get better at something, doing 300 shows in 3 months and each time have an audience and be able to watch the reaction, if you took many performers don't do 300 shows in a year or even in 10 years, and that's the difference, is it can take 10 years to get to where you got in 3 months because you had that constant loop of data, to improve, and you got to iterate quickly.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it. And I remember thinking about that while it was happening because I was already aware of that thing of tightening the iteration feedback loop, knowing that from business, from technology, from startups, from software development. It's my biggest background. And it's absolutely the shorter that iteration time is, the shorter the gap between versions, the better something gets quicker.
Yeah.
And it's funny now, and I wrote this thing for Magic Magazine back when I was writing the column about
back when there was a Magic Magazine.
Back when that was a thing about advice for beginners, because went to Magi Fest in Columbus, and it was a really cool convention. Really, really well run. And one of the things I liked was it had a big focus on encouraging younger magicians, really focusing on their experience, because they're often a bit underserved by many magic conventions. And they had this great big wall of paper, huge paper wall, and they asked magicians, write down your advice for young magicians. What would be the biggest piece of advice? It was really cool, and the advice accumulated, and some of it was funny and some was serious. And I didn't know what to write. It was not something I'd thought about. And one of the things I realized was, thinking about my journey through magic over the 17 years and counting so far, is once you've done that many shows, you realize that before you've done it, you can't imagine what it's like to have done that. And you can't even imagine the lessons you'll learn from having done it. And the advice was, when you're working on a trick, when you're practicing a sleight, you want to do a double turnover, you're working on that, before you even consider whether it's hard or not, do it about 1,000 times. Rule of thumb, aim for 1,000 reps of practice, of diligent, focused practice. Once you know what to do, most people give up after a dozen and go, it's too hard, I can't do this. No, do 1,000. And if you still can't do it after 1,000, okay, then maybe it's too hard. But don't even think you're beginning to get a sense of what it is until you hit that 1,000-ish mark. And then the realization you don't even know a trick until you've performed it, rule of thumb, about 100 times for audiences of people you don't know. And that's unthinkable for the average beginner. I mean, probably my first 5 years in magic, I hadn't done anything 100 times for an audience. But having now done many things that, I realized how little I knew before I'd done that. You can't imagine it until you get there. And same thing, and I thought 100 was a lot. Now, 303 months, that's a whole new level of that repetition. And it's so unbelievably valued.
Absolutely.
And something that I appreciate about you, Simon, and you find in a lot of the guys that we hang out with, is like, when I first met you 5 years ago, you were doing your amazingly impossible visible build change. You came up to John Lovick, who wrote the book on build changes, and showed it to him, and he's like, "What's that? That's amazing," you know? And I saw you do that, and it was perfect when you were doing it back then. As far as technically, it looked amazing, and it still looks amazing, and visually it's still fantastic. Yet today, right before we jumped on to record this show, you showed me a new twist on it, that you're still constantly improving and working on that trick. You didn't 5 years ago go, yep, nailed it, it's perfect, done. It's never done. You're always finding new ways to make it better from the user's side, not necessarily from the technical side, because that that works. You figured that out, and you've tried to reinvent that wheel a couple times and then realized, oh no, the technique I have is still the best technique. And that's kind of dipped and then come back, but everything else is just constantly being woven into it.
Thank you. And there's a lot actually in that I think is really important for anyone working on anything, not whether magic or anything else. In number one, never ever stop working. It's never done. Nothing's finished, because, like you said, sometimes you get worse over time. And that's happened to me with a lot of things. And I've noticed that watching old videos. That's why I video myself so much, so I can look back and go, damn, that looks better back then. I've got worse. I've slipped. I've got complacent. It's got too familiar, or whatever. Or you've made an improvement that you realize actually wasn't an improvement. So sometimes the fact that skill doesn't go like that, it goes in all kinds of weird directions. So number one, never stop working, because you're not always getting better or even plateauing. Sometimes you get worse, so you have to work at getting back up there or even higher. Number two is you don't know when something's the best it can be, and the answer is probably never. What if we stop working at the first cell phone? Bam, we got mobile phones now. Done. Phones are mobile. Sweet. Done. No, it can be. You can't even imagine, again, knowing how much you don't even know where it might go if you keep working on it, what you might discover. Sure, right now that build change is great, but people thought that about build changes earlier than that. That was already great. What will be the thing that makes this thing look like that thing once you figure it out? And you only figure that out by trying things, most of which don't work. Most of things aren't better. So you try it, you go, oh, no, that's worse. Cool, all right, we tried that. That didn't work. I find about a 10-to-1 ratio for every 10 ideas I have, about one of them ends up being good, roughly. So,
still great.
It's not bad. Yeah, exactly. And so you go, 9 out of 10 will be bad ideas, but you have to try them in a performance for real people and go, oh, no, that didn't work. That wasn't good. Cool. Now we know that.
Well, and I think the important thing is that your awareness of when you do something, you're not afraid to do something bad on stage, but then you know, okay, that wasn't great, or it could be better. And the flip side of that is also when you do something great, realizing, hey, that was great. Let's keep doing the great stuff, and let's stop doing the bad stuff. And you need to constantly just try everything to find that out. But there's a lot of performers I see who they keep doing bad stuff. They don't realize it's bad. And then even worse than that, I think, is when they do something great and they fail to realize, hey, this worked, and we need to keep this in the show, because there's guys I've seen who do phenomenal shows or one-offs, and then I see them again and I'm like, where'd all the great stuff go? That's getting rid of great stuff, and they're not keeping it or recognizing it is just as bad as filling your show with bad stuff.
I had some great stuff in there, but it made the mediocre stuff stand out a little more.
Well, that also comes back to that theory of the two lines, the good enough that no one wasted their time or money versus how good you want it to be. And yeah, I'm totally willing to do a shitty routine, because sometimes you need to find out and you need to do that first test, as long as the show as a whole crosses that line. And that's why, again, it's a very old theory of sandwiching. You put a new untested bit between two really solid bits. And I don't mind if a trick completely fails and is a piece of crap, as long as the show overall, people are like, yeah, I'm glad I watched that. I feel like it was a good investment of that piece of my life. My karma is clean and I'm okay. So I'm willing to take that risk.
You find that too, like with the San Francisco Symphony or something like that. You go and they're playing Beethoven's Fifth, at the end of the concert. Everyone knows it. They love this symphony. And then, the second piece is this weird new operatic thing. Yeah. It's a 5-minute piece. No one's ever heard it. It's and it's usually like the audience is like, what the heck was that? And then they're like, okay, now let's follow that with a symphony that everybody loves. They're like, to squeeze that right in between all this other stuff.
One of my favorite phrases in magic is there's something there. And that's when you've tried this new thing and it's not good, but there's something in it that has potential to eventually become good. And that's when it's exciting and frustrating. It's exciting because there is something, but it's also frustrating because it's not there yet, and it might never get there. It might never make it. It might be there's a gem of an idea that you'll never find how to make it really good, and there's 1,000 routines I've got like that never got more than halfway there.
In storytelling,
one day maybe.
it comes up a lot, and it's like, and I'm like, parse, because I'll tell people, like, they'll be passionate about something I won't hear. I'm like, why do you like this? Why do you really like this? Not as a criticism, but like, you see something there that I don't see, and once I see it through your eyes, I can help you bring this out, and we can all of a sudden go, oh, you know, that's what the there is, you know.
And that's so true, because this is one of the things that just most humans in any field don't realize, is how utterly subjective everything is in what you like and what you don't like. And you see it a lot in things like cinema, big release films that some people love and other people hate, and because you're responding to different things. I'm a very plot-driven guy.
But I'll tell you though, but I mean, I'm very much into character. I like a balance, and I would say that as my language of storytelling's improved, I have much better conversation with people about stuff, because I'll say, "Oh, what did you see this?" I go, "Oh, I liked it." I liked it. I go, "What about?" I'll go, "But this," and then I can articulate a thing, and they go, "Oh, yeah." They didn't know how to express that or whatever, and then they go, "Oh, that's why I liked it, but I wasn't sure why I didn't love it or whatever." And so I've had that numerous times as some films have come out that have been big ones, people I love. I go, "What about this or this?" And not like to nitpick. They go, "Oh yeah," and not that I ruin it for them, but just once you learn some of the language of like what's going on, you then you understand. It's like, you know, food. You know, somebody teaches you the different ingredients of it. You go, "It was good. It was kind of bland."
Now I know what that flavor was.
Yeah, and then you go, "Oh yeah, no, I liked it. It was filling, but why it wasn't the best I ever had or this." So, but a lot of it is subjective. But there is in storytelling, there are things that you can diagram it, you can do equations, and you can sort of break a lot of that down into. Some of it gets very subjective because you don't know what somebody's experience level is going into something. But, you know, I draw these comparisons between the Marvel universe and the DC universe. When DC fans who love the DC universe movies go in there, they're bringing every comic book they ever read into there. And that's what they're doing, is they're just watching, yes, it's Batman, the Batman I love, and up on the screen, and not in this isolated, how do I treat this kind of thing, which not disparage it.
Yeah, and I completely agree, because people have so many different things they're looking for out of their entertainment. Yeah. Like, why you go see a movie? A lot of different reasons. Just you want to see explosions, but big. Done. Give me explosions. Tick. 100%. 5 stars.
Yeah, like I'll talk to movies. My dad just wants 2 hours and have fun, and that's it. But even with my dad, I can now articulate more, because like we both saw like Guardians of the Galaxy. He's like, "Oh, I liked it." I said something. Well, here's this thing. I said I enjoyed it, but here's this thing about the structure, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I totally see that." You know, I'm like, okay, you know. So it's like,
and it's funny how I think this comes back to magic and performance generally, in that I, for example, am pretty much blind to fashion and clothing. Not completely, but I mostly don't notice clothes and don't care and don't give a shit. It's just not something. Something I really enjoy is watching a person do a performance in a t-shirt and sweatpants. I get a kick out of that. I like the minimalism of it, but I'm aware that puts me in a minority. And most people, I've seen people see a show where the magic wasn't that great, the comedy wasn't that funny, the person wasn't that likable, but they loved the show because the outfit was amazing. They go, "That was great, his outfit," and that for them that was far more important than any of the other dimensions of the show. And something I think about a lot more now is trying to get good ratings on as many dimensions as I can, have good magic and good comedy, good connection, and good clothes. Even though I don't give a shit, but I know some of the audience will.
I have a diagram though that I think I may have talked about this with Justin, which was like sort of, we're kind of years ago, like breaking down magicians and magic and stuff. I said, the more well dressed they are, I have a reasonable expectation of how much better the technique will be. But I also know the ratio is the level of humor drops considerably. And it's like, I will assume they're extremely well dressed, very well put together. I'm like, yep, they're going to be technically, I know already their technique's going to be great, but I know my laughs per minute. Yeah. The more expensive the shoes they are, and they want me to know that, the humor falls through there.
And it's exactly it, because it tends to be.
Would you agree? Would you say this is
a few boxes? Yeah. And that's the thing, is trying to see if you can get your level up on as many things as possible.
Yeah, but I've rare that I find like the super immaculate natty who's also the super hilarious, because then I think about like, you know, Matt King, David Williams, and you know, I'm thinking like these are like, they're not poorly put together, but they're not, you know.
I think it's also
it's a different choice. You know, Matt King is immaculately, goofily dressed.
Yeah, it depends.
But what he's going for, it's immaculate, but it's a different style.
but it's where's your energy going, you know? Yeah. And you can focus all your energy and resources into your shoes, and you know, then you're not going to necessarily have a new deck of cards for every show. So maybe you have a sticky, gross deck, and you're like, oh, whatever, you know. I think it's better to sort of have everything elevated and on the right levels than to have like great technique and horrible shoes, or great shoes and bad technique, you know.
And yet then you have that flip side. I mean, and this is where we keep talking about trying to get towards this unified theory of magic, where there's so many theories that then have a counter theory, and then this is it. And except for this, there's always an exception, and trying to find the overarching everything theory that accounts for all of it is it's that trap of being good at everything but excellent at nothing. Mm-hmm. So you don't stand out in any way. And it's a tough call. There's pros and cons to both approaches. You really focus on one thing, and both are true. Obviously, it would be best to be excellent at everything. That's often very difficult, if not impossible. So then you think about, well, where do you balance it out? And it's probably that balance of making sure you're really excellent at something and at least good or great at everything else. And if you're going to be poor at something, be as unpoor at as few things as possible.
Well, and I think it depends on how you define success as well. You know, there are guys who they just care about being artists, or they care about, you know, just doing the best that they can at this one thing, and that's great, but then they're not paying their bills because they can't figure out how to get anyone to pay for what they're doing. And so you find that the people who are like pretty good at marketing themselves and sending emails, and pretty good at dressing themselves, and pretty good at doing a magic show, those are the guys that are making the most amount of money, because everything is just slightly above par, or, you know, somewhere between good and better than good, and that works for them, as opposed to people who, you know, don't have.
Yeah, and you get those Pareto-like inflection points where above this level you get diminishing returns on putting more effort into it. Once your emailing is good enough, it's now 10% more work on that only translates to 2% more gigs or 2% more money.
Addictive. If it's a dial you still like to press or lever, and that's the problem. Some people, like, they just keep putting more into that, and it's like, all right, you don't, you know.
And that's my problem. I put too much into the creative development at the expense of everything else. So I'm trying to balance that out now. I'm consciously pulling back on that.
We're going to take advantage of that creative development in our secret session now. So, it's, you know, your loss, our gain. So, gentlemen, I'm going to bring this episode of Magic Club to a close, unless anybody has any last announcements or declarations, or... Nope. Jordan?
I got this is a minor declaration, given that your audience is global. I'm in a show in the Hollywood Fringe Festival in about a month with John Armstrong, John Lovick, Nick Paul, and myself. It's just a fun project. It's one of those things that won't make us any money, it won't get us any attention, but it'll be a really good fun show. We're doing it literally as a magic competition, as in we're going to compete and the audience will vote on their favorite act. And each of us is going to do different material in each show. Every show will be completely different.
Oh, wow. So it's fun.
Each use it to test out bits that we want to work on, again, that are above that threshold, and good enough to perform for a crowd, and or do stable bits, and really play it as a genuine popularity contest. Who take an audience vote on who liked it the most and play for some trivial prize that will be interesting. It'll just be fun to do a show with a bunch of people I like and respect. That'll be a good show every time.
And there's a chance that your bill change you're about to show us might be in that show.
Might even.
Where would we find out more about you, Simon?
Things by Simon on every social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter.
Thingsbysimon.com.
Yeah, thingsbysimon.com.
Choice paralysis. Give them one.
Things by Simon. Just type Things by Simon into whatever app you're in.
Things Whether by it's your Simon web browser. That have been up. Anyhow, listen, Jordan, you want to bring this to a close here?
Visible gavel.
Boom.
Boom.